Well, hello. Welcome everyone who's come to attend our webinar this morning. My name is Paula Morrison. I'm joining you from Kelowna, and I am a regional practice lead in long-term care and seniors care for Interior Health Research Department. And I'd like to welcome Jonathan. Can you introduce yourself?
Sure. Hello, everybody. My name is Jonathan Lowe. I am currently a postdoctoral fellow at the University of Calgary, but I did my PhD at UBCO. Just last year I finished, so have a special place in my heart for all these fun, cool events that happen and go on to educate and engage and get the community involved.
Thank you, Jonathan. Congratulations. That's a big achievement. Um, we'd like to respectfully acknowledge that UBC Okanagan and Interior Health are situated on the traditional ancestral unceded territory of the Silks Okanagan Nation. I'd also like to acknowledge that you're joining us today from many places near and far, and acknowledge the traditional owners and caretakers of these lands. Welcome to the 12th annual Okanagan Embrace Aging Month, and thank you for joining us today. Embrace Aging is co-hosted by Beem Credit Union, Interior Health, and the Institute for Healthy Living and Chronic Disease Prevention at UBC Okanagan. Embrace Aging Month was launched 12 years ago to celebrate and raise awareness about positive aging, and has once again organized a number of educational opportunities and events during the month of March. I'm hoping you got to participate in them. I know I'm looking forward to attending a few more. The sessions are designed for everyone, young and old alike, and focus on a variety of topics for healthy aging and ways to improve quality of life among seniors and their family caregivers. Our goal is to inspire everyone to embrace positive aging. So I got a couple of housekeeping pieces. Closed captioning. To turn your closed captioning off, select the hide caption button on the menu bar if you would like to do that. And questions, please type your questions or comments for the speaker into the chat box during the presentation, and questions will be read at the end of the presentation. Also, feedback for this event, please complete the survey that we will email to you, or have emailed. I think it will be after. Today's event is brought to you with support of Embrace Aging Month, and today's session is Thriving Through Time, Harnessing Exercise and Technology to Combat Chronic Diseases in Aging. And Jonathan is here to present, which I'm grateful for, and I'll pass the mic to Jonathan. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Paula. It's great to be back. I guess not in Kelowna because I'm in Calgary, but be involved here with you and to get to chat through something that I am really passionate about and really feel strongly about, and that is this idea of trying to use or leverage this exercise and technology to help us combat chronic disease and aging. And there's no doubt that obviously those of you who have decided to attend today hopefully have an interest in something in that title that might have caught your eye, or maybe you're here because of Embrace Aging Month and you have an interest in aging. So hopefully as we discuss these really important topics in the next 40 or so minutes that we have, that you will feel like you'll learn something and come away from this series with a newfound understanding that you can maybe talk to your friends or your family about. There's no doubt that in today's day and age with podcasts and social media, that there's a lot of information out there to filter through and to try and understand. And so hopefully today, with some concrete science, we'll be able to add to your toolbox some things that you might be able to try in your life. So as I mentioned, I am at the University of Calgary, so I work kind of in a cross appointment between the Faculty of Kinesiology as well as the medical school here, and doing some things in exercise oncology in people living with cancer. However, during my PhD, I also did a lot of work with people with metabolic disorders and type 2 diabetes, and so kind of sit in this area of clinical exercise physiology and metabolism. So that's kind of the perspective that I'm coming from, just so that you know as we talk today. So the objectives for today are basically, as I kind of mentioned, that you, by the end of today, will learn something or feel motivated by something that I say that might make you want to make one small change in your life to improve your health or your practice. I know that sometimes there's healthcare practitioners that attend these. So whether you are a healthcare practitioner or just a person that's trying to live for your health, that you'll try and make one small change based off maybe something that I say today. And to be able to do that, as I mentioned, I'll hopefully educate you and inform you a little bit on the technology that's out there that might help you do that, the exercise and physical activity literature and knowledge that we have that might motivate you, or maybe help you in terms of understanding a little bit of aging. And at the end of the day, helping you really get a grasp on how all of those might come together. Now, those are all three standalones are very they are very big topics, and we could probably lecture about each and every one of them for a couple of hours, but time does not permit that. So it's your lucky day that that I only have a few minutes to skim the surface here. So I want to start by thinking back thousands and thousands of years to our ancient ancestors, and it's a fun thing to think back about. Okay, where do we come from? But then think back even further to the cave people of the days of yore. And when you think about how these people survived and how maybe we have possibly evolved from them, their genetics and their bodies, our bodies evolved in an area and an environment that was aimed at expending as little energy as possible. But then when there was the time to expend energy to chase after food, to be and do so quickly, to then digest the food, but then there might be times of famine where, okay, we were able to kill whatever that might have been, an animal, we were able to eat that, but then we aren't going to have another kill or eat for maybe a couple more days or even weeks. And so there's this idea that our genetics have kind of evolved in this area of feast and famine, and then trying to expend as little energy as possible, but then when needing to do so, having that readily available. But now, if we fast forward to today's world, um, you might argue that physical activity has really been engineered out of our lives. If we now fast forward to this 2025 that we're living in, um, there's a lot that has been going on in our world, especially in a post-COVID world. I always love to talk about how if you think about your life right now and think about maybe some areas that you have engineered physical activity out of your life. I've got a thought moment that I'll give you time to do that. But really, you can not leave your couch for a lot of things these days. You can click and collect your groceries. You can skip the dishes. You can ask Google to turn on your TV, turn up the volume, turn down the volume. You can ask Google, or I guess any smart home device, to lock your doors, to turn your lights off. There's really a lot of ways that we, if we're not careful, could or have engineered physical activity out of our lives. And if you think that in a post-COVID world where obviously through those years we were not really leaving our houses, or we were supposed to be inside of our house to isolate, that's been further pushed along that idea of not having to leave your home. Which can be a beneficial thing for some people, but generally not as beneficial because it does limit our physical activity and our exercise and our moving about. And if you think again, relating that back to our ancient ancestors who were adapted, our genetics adapted to that moving environment, and now we're in this environment where we don't move, we don't have to chase after our food, we don't have to go out and weed our garden, although maybe some of you do. We don't really have to harvest or dig for potatoes or whatnot. We can do a lot of things with minimal movement, which is very concerning from a chronic disease and overall health perspective. So, post-COVID or during COVID, there's estimates that physical activity levels decreased 50 to 60%. And there's data that shows that we haven't fully recovered from that. So those levels decreased, and they've obviously slightly increased in our world post-COVID, where we're back to quote unquote normal, but they haven't fully recovered, which again is very concerning from an epidemiological public health perspective, with when we're thinking about physical activity levels. So, as I mentioned before, I want you to take a second. I'm going to give you maybe 30 seconds or so just to write down if you're an active learner or if you aren't, if you want to think it through, fine. Areas in your life where you have engineered physical activity out of your life. So I gave a few examples, but think about that. Have you chosen to take the elevator when you are capable to take the stairs? Have you chosen to skip the dishes instead of going out, getting in your car, driving, walking in and getting some food? Or have you purchased a Google Home? And I'm not saying they're bad thing, because we'll talk about how technology can be a good thing, but um, think about that for a second. Maybe you've thought about that while I've been talking, and write that down. So now, um, we go to this yin and this yang that I just alluded to. So we've engineered physical activity out of our lives in maybe the past year, you've noticed. And during the winter, we're in the spring right now. And so we're kind of coming out of the winter time and feeling maybe a little bit more energized. But there's also areas that technology has really been used for the better, to engineer physical activity into our lives. Think for a second, maybe you get ads on your social media or in your life that you see Peloton, which is just an example, right? So we've got these bikes and now treadmills that you can buy in your home. They come with screens, and Peloton's not the only brand. There's many others that you can put in a room in your basement or not in your basement, but you have physical activity that's ready. Snap your fingers. You put on your exercise clothes and you walk downstairs in your house, and you can be physically active, right? We see real estate on our wrists is prime real estate, that wrist space where we've got Apple Watches, we've got Garmin, Paula's showing hers. We've got all sorts of different devices that we can wear. We've got smart clothing that you can wear that will track things. There's rings that you can put. There's earrings and necklaces that will track all sorts of things about you. You can go to the pool, and you can put on special goggles that will display all of the details of your workout right on the screen or right on the lens of your goggles. There's a lot of areas that we've seen this idea of engineering physical activity, but into our lives, right? So we've got evidence that shows that technology in itself, and that is a broad term, can produce a success rate of about 75% in helping improve physical activity habits. Now, there's a lot right now that's trying to say and look at the duration, right? So we see a lot of times, how many of you don't need to show your hands, but how many of you have been gifted a new device, whether that's a new watch, whether that's a heart rate strap, whether that's a bike, super exciting, really great, and you dive right into it and you're using this device and you've got this Fitbit that's really cool. And then fast forward 3, 4 months and it's just something you wear on your wrist and you're not really doing anything with it, right? So in as much as we see that technology can help improve physical activity habits, there's a lot more that we need to understand and pull out on the longevity of those habits, right? So does that help me to stay physically active for a year, as opposed to just that first month where I get that physical activity? And I want you to think about that in your own lives. Has that happened to you? Have you been gifted some sort of a device, or have you recently bought some sort of technological device that's aimed at increasing your physical activity? And has it helped, but then did it wane off? And if that's the case, hopefully today can help you renew your commitment to letting that device increase your physical activities, or letting that device guide you in your journey to being more physically active. Let today be the start of your physical activity journey to engineer physical activity back into your life, or to revitalize those areas or pieces of technology that you've been using to recycle them and get them going again. So when we think about this in terms of aging, so I told you we were going to talk about physical activity, aging, and technology. So when we pull in that aging piece, you can see that wearable devices can help to evaluate the health of elderly individuals and provide personal data. So that we can change, so those who are elderly or aging can change their behavior based on data, right? And so I don't know if there's anybody out there who has used a continuous glucose monitor, which is used in terms of trying to gauge metabolic activity and your glucose levels. And maybe your doctors asked you to wear that, and maybe they've then been able to access that data. So that's what we're looking at when we're thinking about wearable devices. Or maybe your doctor, a really tech-savvy doctor, might have an app that allows you to send your wearable data, your heart rate data, your activity level data to your doctor to be able to look at that and look at those behaviors to then be able to consult you. From a perspective of chronic diseases, a lot of the research that I'm doing right now is looking at using this in terms of from an oncology perspective. We know that individuals who undergo different types of therapies for cancer treatment, some are surgical therapies, others are chemo or radiation, but really trying to characterize the physical activity habits surrounding these treatments because we know that exercise and physical activity can really help in the rebound or the aftermath of these treatments, sometimes even during. And so as we have individuals and we're able to collect this wearable data, it helps clinicians be informed on further decision-making for treatments and current behaviors. So some really exciting things that are happening in different realms of the clinical side of things, but also even just everyday life, healthy populations. So no doubt, welcome to this 21st century that I talked about, right? So we see all sorts of connectedness, right? We see wearable devices, we see prosthetic devices, we see telehealth is really a buzzword these days, right? So we've got doctors who you don't even need to leave your house. You may have talked to your doctor over a Zoom call to be able to get a diagnosis. All sorts of technology and devices that are continuing to be um, uh, prolific in our world right now. You see wearable devices, continuous glucose monitors that'll connect to your watch, and they'll connect to your phone, and you'll have this triage system that'll help you, give you a lot of insights and a lot of numbers that we see out there. Some are useful, some not so useful. So with all of that, I want you to stop and take a moment. So maybe you took a moment to write down how you've engineered physical activity out of your life. Now I want you to stop and take a moment to think about how you've engineered physical activity into your life. Given a lot of examples, whether that's deciding to try out a continuous glucose monitor, whether that's using technology in interacting with your physician, your doctor, or maybe that is buying a watch that you wear that you try and track your steps, or you track your sleep. How have you engineered physical activity in? So we have this yin and this yang, right? So we have this idea of technology that's taken away physical activity with elevators, escalators, drive-in, pickup, click and collect that we've talked about. And then we've got this solution that technology can also be the solution. We've got gym memberships, exercise classes, swimming, running, biking, training to be able to take aim at incorporating technology into our devices. If any of you have watches, you'll know that the thing right now that a lot of companies, Apple Watch and Garmin, are doing is they have programs that all you have to do on your phone is you just have to decide to enroll in a running program, give it some information about yourself, and with AI, these apps and these watches will then create a running program for you or a strength training program for you, which we'll talk about strength training. We'll talk about cardiovascular training in a second in terms of aging. But with AI, there's a lot of things that we can do. Now, I will tell you this. Maybe you're thinking, Jonathan, this is really cool, and you haven't even talked about the physiology of exercise, but I'm really excited about this. But where do I start? And maybe you don't have a watch, and that's okay. But guess what? There's a free tool called ChatGPT, or there's a few other AI websites that you can access. If you haven't accessed them, then after today, you can go and you tell it about yourself as much as you feel comfortable telling it about yourself. And you might say, my name's Jonathan, and right now I'm exercising once a week and I just do a really light run. But I want to try and exercise 3 times a week and I want to do walking for most of it. Can you prescribe an exercise program for me? And lo and behold, these AI modules, ChatGPT, will do that for you. Now, we need to be careful at the idea of prescribing exercise. Not everything is going to be the way that it should be. But there is a paper that was published recently that showed using ChatGPT to generate an exercise prescription and then evaluated by expert exercise physiologists, most of them were in accordance with what it spit out. So again, another example of eliminating these barriers of saying, okay, I don't know where to start. I don't want to hire a personal trainer. I don't want to pay for a personal trainer. Well, now you don't have to pay for a personal trainer, and ChatGPT or AI can help you start. And a lot of these companies, Apple, like I said, Garmin, Fitbit, are incorporating that into their watches so that you can do it right to your watch and it will guide you through a workout. So this is really great. Technology is awesome. Exercising is great, but you might think, Jonathan, why the heck should I care? You are in the Faculty of Kinesiology. You do exercise, you research exercise, so obviously you're very biased, and that is very true. I am biased. So let me try and convince you. Maybe you think exercise is a bunch of baloney. Maybe you don't like to sweat. Maybe you don't have the time in your day. Well, let me try and talk to you a little bit about why you should care, why it's important for you to care. Well, first of all, because you could become a billionaire. Because a lot of research now, and there's no doubt that how many of you have gone to the doctor and the doctor has told you that you should probably be more active, or the doctor's asked you about your exercise levels. And if you haven't, I'm going to tell you that as you age, you will find that very commonly in the doctor's office. The doctor will tell you you need to be more physically active. If somebody could ever generate a pill that could capture all the physiological benefits that exercise gives you and taking it into a pill, you would become a billionaire because that would become the most highly prescribed drug in the entire world. I'm telling you that right now. Exercise is, for all intents and purposes, and I'll tell you again, I'm biased, the miracle drug. If you can become physically active in whatever area of your life, for the most part, that will benefit your life drastically, from a change in body composition, from a reduction in chronic disease incidence in your life, to counteract any genetics that you might be blessed with from your parents. Physical activity can help. It's not a solve-all, but it can play a huge role in helping. So this is when we think about physical activity, and again why you should care, look at all of these things that happen when you are physically active. As you try to get 150 to 2,000 minutes a week of exercise, aerobic or resistance, these are the things that happen in your life. And this slide is I love this slide because it just perfectly shows all of the things that happen in your body. You have an increase in cardiovascular function. You can see this. You can have a decrease in inflammation and depression, anxiety. We know these have all been backed by very convincing research papers. You have an increase in fatty acid metabolism. Your VO2 max, which is a measure of how much or how efficient your body utilizes oxygen. You all know that as you inhale with your lungs, you inhale oxygen because your body and the cells in your body need to use it. Your tissues, your organs, they need oxygen. Well, your VO2 max is a measure of how efficient your body is at utilizing that oxygen when you are at maximal capacity, when you're pushing yourself at maximal capacity. And this is a really interesting measure that we're going to talk about today. But we see a decreased risk for osteoporosis. We see a decreased risk of sarcopenia, so muscle loss, an increase increasing glucose uptake and muscle endurance and muscle capacity. So you can see all of these amazing things, executive function and memory. Gosh, well, that in itself is going to make me want to exercise because I don't want to get forgetful. I want to be able to do math late into my life, right? So maybe you've seen some of these things in your life and you think, yeah, I don't want to feel as anxious as I do, and I haven't been exercising. Well, let this be evidence for you to say that as we age, there's really great benefits for exercise. Take a moment for a second and think about when you get to the ripe old age of 80 or even 90, how do you want to look? Do you want to look like this marathoner, ultra-marathoner, Charles Euster, who at the age of 90 was still running races and you can see a smile on his face? Or would you rather be this individual here who at the age of 90 is probably at the end of their life? And they maybe are not, their quality of life is maybe not as high as the picture on the left, right? So where do you want to be? There's no doubt that as we maintain a physically active lifestyle, that we will skew ourselves more to be like Charles Euster than the individual on the right. So let's tie all of these together. Let's bridge this gap. So we've talked about exercise a little bit. We've talked about the technology out there, and we've talked a little bit about aging as well. So what are your perceptions of aging? I want you to think about this, and I love talking about this because before preparing this presentation, I'll admit that I had biases about aging, and it was something I didn't want to do. I wasn't excited for. And that's kind of a lot of the stereotypes that we have in the world today are, well, we want to reverse aging or we want to stop aging. Well, the reality is that we are going to age. And there's some beauty and there's some joy that should come from aging. And hopefully, when I finish today, you will have your stereotypes and your thoughts might change a little bit of thinking, what a beautiful experience aging is. And it's not a negative thing, but it can be a really positive thing. So I've got a video here that I want to show for a second. That again, this was when I prepared this presentation, this was something that I loved so much. And I thought people need to see this if they haven't. So if you've seen this, I apologize. But if you haven't, hopefully it will help you. Now, tell me if you can hear my sound. Paula, thumbs up? No. Okay. So let me go to advanced and I need to share my computer sound. Okay. Here we go. Now, can you hear it? Let me start again.
I'm great. How are you?
Great.
Awesome.
Just tell us your first name and your age.
My real age?
My name is Paolo. I'm 25 years old.
My name is Daniela, and I'm 19.
24. 35.
31. 33.
I'm 26 years old.
What age do you consider to be old?
Late 40s?
Maybe 50.
I feel like 30 is a new 20, so I'd say like 40 is old.
I'd probably say 50s.
I'd like you to show me how an old person would cross the street. Show me how an old person would send a text message. How might an old person do a push-up? What about jumping jacks? Okay, hang on. There's someone I want you to meet.
Hello, I'm Birch. I'm 66.
Hi, I'm Daphne, and I'm 68.
I'm Dee, and I'm 55.
George Fastbinder, 75.
My name is Parvati. I'm 70.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
We're gonna give you about 2 minutes to teach each other something that you are good at.
I can teach you a jump that I do.
Okay, please.
Both of your legs go up, and your arm goes up, and your left arm goes like to the side. Ready?
Okay.
1, 2, 3. Lift 1, 2, 3. And bring it to your heart. And bring it to your heart. Add the head in. Yeah.
You want to try to get your balance and raise up. Now, you can bring your legs and your feet up. It's hard, right?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7. So when you come out of a turn, either way, you go back to that basics.
Over. Now forward. Over. Yeah.
Square it like this, and give me a hook. Hook. Jab, cross, hook, and then we'll go like this, all right?
1, 2, 3.
Now, what age might you consider to be old?
Probably 80 or 90. He could just do everything that I told him to do. An age that I would consider to be old now might be 100.
Do you remember what you said?
Yeah, I said in the 50s. I thought that would be old. But when I thought about it, like...
Wait a minute. Can I do it?
It really changed my thinking of what old is. You've taught me something today. Clearly, there's no way she's old, you know?
Now I know from today, hey, I don't look at age.
At my age, I feel like I did when I was in my 20s.
There's so many things that I still want to do. There's so many things that I can do. As long as I'm growing and learning, then age doesn't matter.
When people start stopping, that's when they start getting old.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
Daphne.
you. It was great meeting you.
How long have you been doing this? Is this a new skill?
40 years.
Wow.
Awesome. Okay, so there you have it, that we can age gracefully and we can embrace aging. And maybe throughout that video, there were some things that stood out to you that you might have thought, huh, you can get to your 50s, 60s, 70s and still feel like you were in your 20s. And I'm going to tell you that one of the keys to that video and to the success that those individuals had comes down to increased and maintaining levels of physical activity and exercise. So let's talk a little bit about physiology. Now, bear with me. I tried to keep it light from physiology perspective. This is where most of my life lives in research, but I'll try and keep it high level. So we talked about earlier, I mentioned this idea of a VO2 max. Again, so how much your body, how efficient and how much your body can consume oxygen, which it needs to live when you're pushing yourself to your highest capacity. Now, if you can see here, as we age, generally, our VO2 max, or our measure of our body's ability to consume and utilize oxygen, decreases, okay? But you can see for those who are endurance trained individuals, or say those who walked on a regular basis, or who ran, or who swam, or who biked, or who went to aquafit regularly, those individuals, as you can see, had a less effect of a decrease in their VO2 max as they aged all the way to 80. You can see that very stark difference between those who are sedentary, so those squares, as opposed to the filled in dark circles. Now, why should we care about that? Well, you should care because there's a lot of research that shows, and this is the New England Journal of Medicine, so a very high impact fact journal, or a journal that's very reputable, showing that our ability to exercise, our exercise capacity, if we maintain our exercise capacity, then to put it lightly, we die less. Your risk of dying drastically decreases as you age if you are able to keep your VO2 max at a relatively high level, or your ability to physically perform functions. And you see here, they talk about METs. Those are called metabolic equivalents. And those are basically just a measure of how much you are exerting yourself. And so you can see that those with higher levels of ability to perform a task, a metabolic task or a physical task, were had a decreased risk of dying, of death. Okay, now this is also another interesting thing, right? So when we think about aging, you can see here that in our early lives, we have that maximal muscle strength, right? So you probably, if you think to your 20s or your 30s, or maybe you're there right now, we have that peak ability to generate muscle strength. But then as we age, you can see here that there's a range of muscle loss that happens. And so this is a really important point that I want to hit home, because maybe you think you don't need to be physically active because you're okay and you had great genetics. But the reality is that as you age, you will start to lose muscle. And this is the muscle strength. This is what this shows you. But the good news is, and a loss of muscle, I guess I should say, a loss of muscle is an important consideration, because we know that muscle is one of our most metabolically active tissues, right? When we think about glucose regulation, there's a lot out there about insulin resistance and sensitivity. But as we age, our muscle strength decreases, but we need our muscle to be able to move, to be able to catch ourselves. If we slip on the ice and fall, the more muscle strength we have, the better we can catch ourselves, and maybe we don't have a broken hip, as opposed to if we weren't training, right? So when we train, we want to consider muscle, right? So this is a really cool study that enrolled individuals who were older, and they had them do 8 weeks of high intensity resistance training. Okay, so it was quite high intensity. They were sweating a lot. And they showed that these individuals who were older were still able to gain strength. Okay, so that is really important, because high resistance weight training leads to significant gains in muscle size, strength, and functional mobility amongst frail residents of nursing homes up to 96 years of age. So how cool is that? Well, I showed you that graph that muscle does waste as we age. The good news is that as you are physically active and try and incorporate some resistance training or weights into your routine, as we age, we can combat that muscle loss and that all those detriments that come, cardiovascular, chronic diseases that come as we have muscle wasting. Okay, so you can see this again. This is kind of going back to the point that I made. This graph shows us that as we maintain moderate to vigorous levels of physical activity, so again, that's walking, that can be running, where you're getting your heart rate up, walking up hills, upstairs, we see a decreased risk of dying. Okay, so your hazard ratio mortality is drastically decreased as you are more active. Leisure time physical activity, like I said, that can be walks. As long as you're getting that heart rate up, you will be able to live a longer, more life filled with vitality, longevity, right? Not long life where we're laying in a bed, but a long life where we're active and we're running with our grandkids and we're playing with our kids and enjoying life to the fullest. So you think, okay, well, Jonathan, you've talked about physical activity. You've convinced me. Maybe I have, maybe I haven't. Hopefully I have, that I should maybe be incorporating more physical activity into my life to continue with to combat weight loss, to increase my muscle, but for my health. And if you think about that figure, all of those things that come with it. So where should I be? Well, we know that generally the recommendation from the Canadian Society for Exercise Physiology, which is kind of the governing organization for exercise and physical activity in Canada, suggests that we should be trying to get at least 150 minutes a week of moderate to vigorous physical activities. Okay, so I've given lots of examples of what that could look like, and anything from more than what you're doing now. So maybe you're a couch potato, and that's okay. Maybe just walking around your house, walking up and down your stairs is a start for you. Or maybe you are currently walking 2 times a week and that's great, but maybe that might only be 100 minutes and you want to get to 150. So you think, well, I'm going to start going to an aquafit class, or I'm going to register in a tennis course because I'm in my 50s and I know that I can still learn new things. And maybe I want to partake in a dragon boat racing festival. And so I join a class and I'm a social person and I really enjoy it. And so then I do my walks and then I go to my class that's tennis or that's aquafit, and there's my 150 minutes. My heart rate's getting up, right? We also recommend that physical strengthening or weight training should also be incorporated at least twice a week if you can. Now, these are recommendations, but just know that if you can't get 2 times a week and you can only get once, that's better than nothing. So don't let these discourage you if you can't get to where these say you should be. Starting somewhere is where the best place is for you. Okay, so and of course balance as well to consider. So I want you to stop and think about this for a second. What's the big deal for you? How could you change? And how has your current situation in your life affected your physical activity levels and the things that you enjoy? So think about that for a second. Maybe you are living with a chronic disease, or maybe you are still working and you have a busy work life, and then you've got grandkids, or maybe you have children still that you're trying to help and support. How has that affected your physical activities levels? Maybe it's made you more active, or maybe it's made you less active. Maybe you recently had a pet that passed away, and when you had your pet, you took them for walks a lot, and now you don't, and so you aren't walking. So where is it in your life for each of you that you could change, or that you have changed your physical activity levels for good or for the worse, right? And based on what I've told you today, how do you understand how physical activity levels could help you? Think about that. So I've talked about a lot of things, physiology, not physiology related, but ultimately how technology and exercise could help. And what do you understand about that? And how does that apply to you specifically? Because I could lecture for, like I said, hours and hours. But if you don't think about how it applies to you, then it's not gonna work, and you're not gonna change anything based off of coming today. So if you're investing this time, hopefully it pays off for an improvement. So we think about barriers and concerns that you might have for your physical activity levels, and think about that solution. So maybe you did lose a pet and you haven't been walking as much. Well, how could you change to incorporate that? Could you ask a friend to keep you accountable to go for walks with you? Or maybe you get another dog that might require you to be out and be more physically active. Or maybe the weather's been really crummy, and so you get a little treadmill or a walking pad that you can get on Amazon to walk while you're watching your favorite TV show. What's the solution look like for you? Again, I can't solve your problems for you, but if you can learn how to solve your problems for you when it comes to physical activity, then you will be a lifelong exerciser. So the Tech Hub, I've mentioned this throughout. This is just another highlighting. Maybe you want to incorporate technology. We've got GPS, heart rate monitoring, workout suggestions you can get now from ChatGPT or from your watch. Incident detection. Maybe you're worried about falling while you go for a walk. Well, a lot of devices have an incident detection where it will detect if you've fallen, and it will text or email a significant other or somebody in your life who can come and help you if that's the case. Blood glucose monitoring if you're living with a metabolic or diabetes. So lots of really great things that we can get. Medication reminders to take your medications. You can get those with devices. The list is endless that you could do. If you can think it, it's probably been invented and you could probably buy it. Again, this is just another explanation or examination of all the things out there. Step counting, core temperature, blood pressure, ECG. Technology can really help. If there's anything here that sticks out to you, then I would encourage you to look into and do some research on how that can help you. So we've come to the end of this hopefully fruitful discussion of me just talking and hoping that you're listening to me. But the recap of what was the objective today? What have I tried to convince you of? Well, hopefully by now, maybe you've understood a little bit of what technology is out there, how you can use it to combat aging or to help you age gracefully and embrace the aging process and chronic disease, and that you will make one small change to your life to improve your own health. Write that down if you haven't already. What is one small change that you can make from a physical activity and exercise perspective? Can you add another session of walking? Can you add or can you start? Can you buy new running shoes, or maybe get a membership to an aquafit class to start aquafit or swimming links? What does that look like for you in your life? And think about that, and write that down and make that change. I encourage you to make that change and ask somebody to keep you accountable to that. Because there's no doubt that as you do that, as we've seen, you will be able to live a longer life filled with vitality and longevity, with a higher quality of life, compared to if you weren't physically active or exercising as you continue to age. So thank you so much for listening. I hope that you've enjoyed this conversation, or I guess not conversation, but this presentation that we've had, and that you've learned something. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. I have seen that video before, and every time I see it with new eyes. It makes you think about how you think about aging. Like, and I would be considered what the millennials in that group would think was old. So I was like, okay, that's interesting. And it makes you think about what you thought of when you were younger, what you thought about aging looked like. And now I have a much different appreciation for aging. And my grandfather lived to 105. So that says something.
Coming
Yeah.
for you.
He broke some barriers and made me really break some of my thinking about aging. I appreciate your presentation. It was really great. I wanted to let people know that they can ask questions in the chat box. And we do already have a couple questions. So if you have any more, feel free to type them into the chat. But we had one individual ask, always interested in Canadian solutions using technology. Are you aware of any of that tech that is Canadian created?
I know that, I guess I probably should say, so I worked for a company called Garmin, and I know that they create wearable devices. I know a lot of their technology actually is developed here in Cochrane, so just outside of Calgary.
Oh, wow.
Their Canadian headquarters are there. Now, having said that, I think their devices are actually made overseas in Taiwan, but the technology itself is developed here, and then tested here, and then distributed from here. I don't think it is made in Canada. From a perspective of other tech solutions, I know, again, with technology specifically, when we think about where the manufacturing happens, most of manufacturing does happen over Thailand and China. But I know Lululemon as a Canadian-based company, from my knowledge, and they've got a few tech options that I think they call it the Mirror, which is a screen you can buy, and that gives you workouts at home that you can work through. So those are the few at the top of my brain.
Thank you.
that I can think of. Yeah,
it's just one of those things we're all thinking about. Well, we get our elbows up.
That's right. That's right.
And another question is there a difference in BP monitoring that is at the wrist level versus the usual armband?
Yes, there is a difference. And from a measurement perspective, essentially what the companies have done is they have taken surrogate measures of what they're seeing at the wrist from the light on the back of your watch, which is they call it the PPG sensor, but the light on your back of your watch, what that is seeing, and they correlate that to what the actual measurement is at your arm. So it's a surrogate measure. So all of that to say that the gold standard is certainly at the armband, at the arm. However, they have been able to measure it at the wrist. And I will also take this time, I think I have time to get on my soapbox for a second, to be aware that at the end of the day, these companies are really great, and their advertisements are really carefully marketed so that you think that they have your best interest in mind. They do, for the most part. but at the end of the day, they want your money because they need to stay afloat. So just be cognizant of that, because a lot of the companies will develop a product or a technology that they will advertise and they'll shout from the rooftops. Whether it is functioning the way that it should function is a different can of worms. So, and a lot of companies have found ways around. So, for example, ECG is a medical grade technology. So to be able to get approved by the FDA or Health Canada, and so they'll find ways around to get that technology without having to go through that full process, or they will go through the full process, and then it's a little bit more reliable. So just be cognizant of that. I think often we as consumers like to think that food companies or tech companies have our best interest in mind, and that they really want us to be healthy, when at the end of the day, what are they putting in our food? How are they measuring these health things? And are they actually telling us what they should? So just be a little bit critical about that. That's my
Buyer
soapbox.
beware, right?
That's right.
No, I
Yes, exactly.
appreciate that. Jaquetta shared that she really likes the Garmin products, that they're excellent. And she uses the free version of Strava to record different activities. And this helps keep her motivated and pushes me to work harder too. So I've heard of Strava, and I've had people add photos. Like I lead yoga in the community on some days, and they ask me to take photos of our class, and I get permission, and they add it to their Strava. So it's kind of fun. It sounds like a fun app.
It can be, and I think a lot of the apps have kind of that when we think about a exercise psychology and behavioral perspective, check it. That's so true. So a lot of these apps have that social element built in, and a lot of people find that they are able to maintain and continue to exercise if they have that social element. So whether that's a group that you exercise with, or whether that's a online group like Jaquetta, where I'm scrolling, I do the same thing. I'm not scrolling Facebook or Instagram or TikTok. I'm scrolling my Strava feed, and you can send kudos, you can like things, you can add comments. And so there's that community, that sense of community, which as human beings, we love that community, that social connectedness.
Healthy social media. That's
right.
what I'm
Exactly.
hearing.
Yeah. So you can add, and you, like you said, you can add pictures. And so there's a lot of great elements that you can build in. Again, that think about, okay, well, I'm going to do this for myself, but I'm also going to do it because my followers are going to wonder where my workout is today if I don't have it on the feed, right?
That's awesome. Yeah, I don't see any extra questions. So if you're, I'm really grateful for it's motivating to talk to you, and I appreciate it. And it's a good presentation for getting us thinking about our activity and technology. Yeah, so we encourage you to attend other events scheduled for Embrace Aging Month. Please visit our website, OkanaganEmbraceAging.com. For all the events and registration. We look forward to growing this event in the Okanagan and encourage anyone interested in supporting Embrace Aging in the future to please contact us. Contact information is available on our website. You'll receive an email with a link to an online evaluation form. Please fill it out. It helps us with planning and bringing in other events. We welcome everyone's feedback and suggestions for Embrace Aging events in the future. So thank you so much. Oh, there's a couple points coming in. You can ask, we have a couple more minutes if that's okay, Jonathan.
Sure. Yeah.
Is there a maximum amount of time per interval or day per day one should spend in peak heart rate zones, as shown on Fitbit, for example?
Okay. Oh, that's a great question. So I think if peak heart rate zone I'm assuming that the question is in. So generally we divide our heart rate zones into 5 different zones. And so zone 5 would be that maximal effort. And usually on a lot of the apps, it's represented by a red color, the color red, or the red zone. And then right below that, we've got the orange zone, which is kind of zone 4, threshold. And then we've got moderate, which is green zone usually, which is zone 3. So if the question is the peak heart rate zone being red zone, yes, there is certainly a maximum amount of time that we would want to be spending there. And usually it hovers around 20-ish minutes at that maximum. And now it's important to consider the exercise intensity that one is working at, and then the recovery period, right? So if on one day I'm going to be working at that peak heart rate, so say for example I'm doing intervals, and maybe I'm doing 2 minutes at that peak intensity, and then I'm taking a rest. Maybe I'll take a day recovery, and then the next workout that I do will be in a lower zone, in a moderate zone, because you need to give your heart rate and your whole body time to recover. So I would probably say around 20-25 minutes at that peak red zone that we'd want to be in on a daily or per workout basis.
Okay, that's good information. It helps us frame our workouts. I appreciate that. Sharon says, thank you for an inspiring and necessary presentation. Great information. Appreciate your research into cancer and exercise. And she goes on to ask, if you use a treadmill, what speed and level is ideal for a 30-minute workout?
That is a great question, Sharon. Okay. I would say, and this is probably not what I'll give you two. I'll give you two answers. I think we have time. First is the zone or the speed that you enjoy the most. So, and that's going to be different for everybody, because some people might enjoy that harder workout. Maybe you have a history of exercising in a high intensity in high school, or a high level athlete. So maybe you might enjoy that higher intensity, or maybe you're just new to exercise and you don't like that uncomfortable, sweaty feeling where you have to push yourself. And so you like the lighter. I would say, first off, whichever you enjoy the most, because that's what you will do on a consistent basis. So I could design the perfect program for Sharon, who's asking the question. But at the end of the day, if she's not going to enjoy it, she's not going to do it long term. Yeah. And when we're thinking about this, and hopefully you got this in my presentation, we're thinking about lifelong exercisers. We're not thinking about a 6 to 12 week intervention that you're going to do from now until the summer to get a beach bod. We're thinking about now until you turn 90 years old and you've been exercising regularly, right? Now, I will say that from a physiological perspective, so that's the exercise psychology perspective, but from a physiological perspective, I would say as long as you are exercising, and if you have a heart rate monitor, in at least the blue or green zone or above. So what is that? That's, again, if you're writing notes or taking notes, then it's generally at least 65% of your heart rate max. Now, how do you know your heart rate max? Generally, we would do, if you're not measuring it, you would just do 220 minus your age. So for example, if I was 30 years old, I would do 220 minus 30, that's 190. So that would be my predicted heart rate max. And then I would take 65% of 190. And that is where I would want my heart rate to be at. Now, again, if you're not wearing a heart rate monitor and you're not interested in that, then whatever you enjoy. And as long as you feel like another way to do it, sorry, this is a long answer there, Sharon. So another way to do it, if you don't have a heart rate monitor, is just what we call a rating of perceived exertion. So on a scale from 0 to 10, when you're exercising, 10 would be maximum. You are pushing yourself the max you can. 0 is you're laying in your bed, you're laying on a couch. You want to be, when you're exercising, around a 5 or 6 out of 10. That's where we're going to get a lot of the physiological benefits when we're exercising. So, and that's really, that can be individualized, like I said. So maybe whereas Paula might have been an expert elite gymnast and she's used to pushing herself, so that 5 and 6 is a lot higher intensity than opposed to maybe me, where I grew up curling. And so I don't really know about, or maybe you do. Curlers are great. Actually, it's good a form of exercise, but so then you adjust it accordingly. So about a 5 to 6.
How many beverages you're having when you're curling.
Exactly. There you go. So generally I would say probably a 5 or 6 out of 10 if you're gauging just your perceived exertion.
I appreciate that, because I think that has changed off and on. And I appreciate you saying that something that you're that you enjoy and that you will do. That's important.
Mhm.
And makes sense. Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, we're coming to the end of our session. I really appreciate you presenting today and for everybody attending. Thank you. Thanks, Jonathan.
Thank you, Paula. It's always a pleasure. Hope you all
Yeah,
learned
take care.
something. See
Yeah,
you.
thank you. I definitely did. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.